potentially fun offseason mailbag question. As the never-ending coaching carousel carries on each offseason, it's often brought up that X job is better than Y job because of blank. Or, quote, this coach should wait a year and get a top 20 job. I'd be curious to know a cover 3 ranking of the top 10, 15, or 20 jobs in college football and what factors go into ranking each job. Again, love the pod. Keep up the great work, fellas. So when I in our doc, I did not include top 20. I don't think we need to take it that far. That seems excessive.
Top 50 college football coaching head jobs.
And remember that we are not saying this is not the coach rankings. In May, we are going to be having a CBS Sports coach rankings. We are going to talk about our ballots for the CBS Sports coach rankings here on the Cover 3 podcast. And that is going to be ranking individual coaches. Today, we are ranking jobs. Before we get into our lists, I'm curious about the second part of that question from our listener. What factors go into it? What matters the most to you, Danny, in terms of trying to say what makes a job great?
Resources. How can I get the best players in the game? How can I attract the top players? It's one thing I really have come a long way on the last 15 years. I've been an analyst because I used to get annoyed by, I would have been annoyed with Bud's blue chip ratio. I've been like, this is a great team game. This is a team sport. We can overcome that with great coaching
and stuff back in the day.
Right.
Oh, no. All right.
I would have definitely been like, wait, what are we doing? We can coach our way out of this.
And Danny was the bluest of blue chips. He was like one of the best quarterback recruits in the entire country. And he played with nothing but absolute freaks on peak Bobby Bowden teams.
It's true. But we agree, great work ethic.
Grit.
And we
Grit.
worked our tails off. So you can achieve with great effort. But over the years, I've seen the blue chip ratio be the most accurate thing in sports. I've come to realize the game is all about talent acquisition. So I would say resources. How do you attract the best competition? And then it goes to facilities, which all ties into how do you get the best guys there? Fan support, same. They have to give the NIL program. So it all boils down to who's going to give you the best support to build what you want to build.
Who's going to pay me the most money?
Okay.
And whose fan base is going to donate the most money so they can keep paying me the most money? So give me the rich school with the crazy fans. Texas A&M is the #1 job in the country.
Go ahead. But I mean, are you resources, talent acquisition, recruiting footprint, like those?
Kind of, yeah. I like money, although most of the jobs that we would conceivably put on this list are sort of going to hit that minimum.
Right.
Are you leaving one job where you make 9.5 to go make 11? Maybe, but there are other factors you care about too. So I would say expectations of the job versus the ability to actually meet those expectations. Is this a place where they're going to fire me after 4 years because they're just run by crazy people? I'd rather make $1 million less per year, but have a place where I'm like, you know what, honey, we can raise our kids here in the same town for 10 years straight and give our family some semblance of a normal life, and they'll grow up with kind of the same friends. That doesn't happen often, but that's certainly the dream if you can achieve it. And so I do think having some understanding of what the expectations are and the ability to meet them are really important in this gig. Alignment goes into that too. I would have had Florida quite a bit higher on this list if we did it a decade ago than I do today. I wouldn't have them in my top 10 today. I don't think they have good alignment. Where am I going to live is a big thing. And that's just a preference where you like. Some people might like the Pacific Northwest more, or they might like a big city or a college town. Do you care about how much can you go out to dinner in some of these places and not just be constantly hounded? I'm not going to put Kentucky in my top 10 list, but people talk about Lexington being a big enough place to where Mark Stoops can go out to dinner and not just be harassed. I don't know if Calipari can, but
Calipari can't leave his house without being harassed.
Lincoln Riley can go to dinner in LA, right? Kalen DeBoer can go to dinner in Seattle and not have people come up to him. Good luck going to dinner in Tuscaloosa. Right. Yeah, exactly. So how big of a town is it? Do you care about where is it? Those things and I don't think.
I've got one thing that no one has specifically mentioned, and I did not have on my list, but I think a lot of traditional thinking would have it out there, and that is a winning tradition. LSU did not have a winning tradition for a long time. And then Nick Saban created a winning tradition. And LSU's on my list. LSU's on my list because they've got the recruiting footprint. LSU's on my list because of what we've laughed about, the old Barton story. You show up to the Louisiana state championships and every single high school is purple and gold, or they're named the Tigers, or both. Like it is an entire mindset of a talent-rich state to prepare the best football players to be in the mix to go to LSU. And I don't think that you can look at pre-Saban and see a long winning tradition. In the same way, there are programs that have national championships on national championships from a bygone era that I do not have on my list of top 10 jobs right now. You can't just point to the trophy cases and think that that's automatically going to flip and be able to be instant success. Just ask Jim Harbaugh, where it took him near a daggum decade to be able to get everything together.
So no Minnesota, Nebraska on your list?
No Minnesota, no Nebraska. You're right. You're spot on. So combine that with all the other factors that we've got here, and at least those contributed to, my own sort of personal analysis, this snapshot of the top 10 jobs.
I don't think there's any right answers, but I do think there are some potentially like wrong answers if you polled coaches. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like there's certain jobs where like, okay, like that's not a top. I'm not saying I know exactly where it should be placed, but like that's not a top 4 job.
Are any of your top 10 outside of the Big Ten and SEC?
Nope. Not right now. It's not.
Just
only one.
Only one.
Yeah.
I had 2. I mean, come on. ACC boys got to ride together, but they are 9 and 10.
Yeah, right. And it's only because of the confidence that I have that these schools are going to get out of that league and fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if Florida State gets in the Big Ten or the SEC, it jumps back into my top 10. But right now, not in my top 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's too many questions?
Nebraska to Minnesota. Yeah. I mean, look. Yeah.
All right. So let's start at the top. What's number 1?
Bud had me flip-flop my 1 and 2 because of what he mentioned about where you live. Give me Texas. Give me Austin. Resources galore, winning tradition, money, deep, deep pockets. You do have the redheaded stepchild down the street in College Station, but I still think you get the better of them with recruits. Give me Texas.
I'm going Georgia.
I had Georgia 1. I flipped them to 2. It's not that far from Atlanta. Like it is. Athens is a great college town. I have them too.
Athens, great college town, and Georgia has an LSU-like. I mean, everyone comes into Georgia. There is so much talent. Everybody's coming to Georgia. Every SEC school's coming into Georgia. Clemson's coming into Georgia. Florida State's jumping up into Georgia. But you do have, like, you are the prominent flagship football program of a talent-rich state. I've got Georgia as my number 1.
How many programs have had 3 different head coaches win national titles in the last 20 years?
Ohio State is also
no, it's not the one.
No, LSU.
LSU is number 1 on my list. Because I mean, Georgia's a great job. I mean, I was saying it was a top 5 job years ago before Kirby did, and back when people were like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But till Kirby showed up, a lot of good coaches didn't win national titles. So it's like, is that Georgia or is that more Kirby at this point? Will they still be able to maintain it after he's gone? We know LSU, you can win national titles with Ed Orgeron. You can win them with Les Miles. You can win them with that Saban guy. You could probably win them with Brian Kelly. We'll see. To me, that is the number 1 job in the country. And also, Baton Rouge is a fun place to live.
But to Bud's point, you can also get fired even if you did win a national championship. You're 2 seasons away from being shown the door.
You can. But
those guys were really incompetent at the end, though. I mean, like,
yeah,
agreed.
Like Les got a really long leash before they finally let him go, and then Ed kind of did other things that got him let go.
What do you think? Y'all remember that story from the gas station in that article?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, what's that got to do with me?
I mean, I bet you if you asked Saban, he'd say LSU's a better job than Alabama.
Yeah.
I have LSU ahead of Alabama.
Yeah, I do too.
Mm-hmm.
I had Bama at 3.
I'll go ahead and just say Ohio State to round it out, because I really thought there were legitimately 4 answers that you could give for the best program in the country, or the best job in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we just named them all: Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ohio State in some order. I mean, you have to be a really fantastically bad coach to not win at Ohio State. Ohio State is basically automatic wins. Like they're like Oklahoma on steroids as far as their results. So
where does
everybody
Bama
gets
fall
that-
for you guys? And a lot of it, I would say right now, like that's what I was saying when they did the search. I'm like, I don't think Bama is the desirable spot because you had to follow Saban. But in a vacuum, let's say in 5 years, whether it works or it doesn't with DeBoer, where does Bama fall? I had them higher than LSU.
I've got them behind the 4 schools we've mentioned. I think they are flirting between bottom of tier 1 and top of tier 2, and they are much closer to Tennessee than any Alabama fan would like to admit.
I'm not ready to go there. I had them as like my clear 5.
Okay.
Just because I would rather live in all those cities as well, rather than Tuscaloosa. And I think the access to talent in all those cities is equal or better than it is in Tuscaloosa, you know? And I think also the expectations and the ability to meet them aspect here plays really, like you have to follow Nick Saban. So we're saying like, what are the best jobs right now?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think you could have, I mean, Alabama has to be in the top 10, I think, but I think you can have it anywhere between 5 and 10, depending on your own kind of personal preference. Like for me personally, and this isn't knock on what you can do at Alabama, but I would rather have the Oregon job than Alabama, simply because I would rather live in Eugene than in Tuscaloosa. And I think you can get the same kind of resources there. I mean, like Dan Lanning seems pretty happy in Eugene, feels like he wants to be there for a while. I would probably be in that kind of similar path. So I have Oregon ahead of Alabama.
All right. So what? Now we're getting into the second tier where it's a little bit crowded. Who's the higher school? The school that you think you might be higher on than anybody else here in the bottom half of the top 10?
I had Oregon pretty high.
Oregon.
Dang, I had Oregon at 6.
Yeah, I have Oregon at 5. So
I had them 6.
None of us have them higher than we thought. So we're all wrong.
This
on
one
that
though,
one.
does this one you ignore where you have to live? Because Eugene is hard to get to. It's hard to recruit from, but you just have private jet use and you're able to.
Yeah. How often you think Dan Lanning flies commercial?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Any
Probably
of these
not.
coaches at any of these schools aren't flying commercial.
It's like I have Oregon at 6, and that's like the highest I think I've ever had them. They're by far the highest team on here that's never won a title post World War II. But I really think that they have Phil Knight just going all in right now, like Mike Ilitch was when he got in his, when he was 90 years old trying to run the Tigers. It's like, what's the luxury tax? Don't care. All right, we're just going to spend and spend and spend. And like they got embarrassed twice in a row by guys job hopping who were Florida natives, by the way, going back to FSU and going back to Miami. And they're like, we're not going to have it happen a third time. Like, let's keep in mind here, Oregon kept Dan Lanning. And I know the Chris Lowe article and whatever that was about not being interested. Yeah, right. Like you'd rather have. Okay. Yeah. I think Oregon did what they needed to do to keep Dan Lanning, and that shows a tremendous level of commitment. And also the expectations there are reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you were talking about I was thinking that a place like Oregon or a place like Penn State that I've got in my top 10 comes also down to like Texas A&M is not in my top 10. Texas A&M has resources. Texas A&M has talent in state that a Penn State or an Oregon do not have. But if we're talking about the job, it does seem like you have a different or more manageable set of expectations based on your resources at a place like Oregon or Penn State than you do at Texas A&M.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, Chip, based on your view of Alabama and Tennessee jobs, I would say Tennessee is the job you're higher on than most everybody else.
Oh, I don't have Tennessee in my top 10. I was just using their rival as like an example. I mean, I just mentioned I got Penn State at number 8. I've got Oklahoma at number 7. Did Oklahoma make y'all's top 10?
I had Oklahoma at 8.
Fringe. I had a really hard time numerically ordering these ones we got past 6.
Yeah. I have them at 10, but it's not.
I have heard, and like Brent, hit me up. I'd love to come out and pay you a visit in person. I know he's a big fan of the Cover 3 podcast, but I have heard that it is surprising how strong just sort of the operation is around Oklahoma football. That just the infrastructure, it's tight. Like we talk about alignment. We talk about making sure that things don't fall through the cracks, that you don't book a hotel for an away game that's an hour and a half away from the stadium, like details, like being able to really have a well-run operation. I think that Oklahoma is a place that we know the commitment is there. The on-field results definitely speak to it. And even though Oklahoma individually and the Big 12 definitely have not been pumping out loads and loads of NFL draft talent like other conferences, and they just seem to be able to get it done on Saturdays in the fall. I don't think it's anybody can win there like an LSU, but I do think that right now it is set up in a way where it's one of the 10 best jobs in college football.
Do you think you would be buying high
on Oklahoma? Because you're about to hit the SEC and about to have a huge reality check?
Yeah, that's the only thing that would concern me. I'd want to see it first,
That's fair. Definitely.
I mean, I don't know that Oklahoma is going in with unrealistic expectations, right? Their win total at FanDuel is 7.5. Now, maybe OU fans think that's laughable, and perhaps it is. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it's, again, I really think there are like 15 jobs you can argue for 10 spots. I was able to do kind of 1 through 4, toss it up in the air. I think Bama, Oregon, for me, needed to be 5, 6 in some order. And then 7 through 15 is really like, where do you want to live? Okay. If you want to put a Florida State or a Clemson or a Notre Dame in the top 10, how confident are you that they're going to join a conference in relatively short order? Because if you're not confident that Florida State or Clemson get out, then you can't have them in the top 10, because we're very quickly going to be paying out of conference revenues. And then those schools are nuked if they, are not out of these leagues. Because all of a sudden Vandy's going to have a 4X payroll of Clemson. So
that's because when Florida State and Clemson do join a new league, they're probably not going to be getting full shares. So it's like there's going to be a gap there where they're going to be a little bit behind. You got to play catch up. So
unless they create a bidding war between the two leagues, which I think is probably unlikely to happen, because the two leagues seem to be colluding together with their working order and are probably going to merge at some point, if I had to guess. So why would two businesses that are probably going to become one business at some point compete, with one another for a school? So I agree with you. I think they will probably not get full shares.
Yeah, like in a vacuum, FSU is a top 10 job, and I don't really think there's a whole lot of debate about it. It's just in the current environment, too many questions.
Penn State, anybody else? Because I did not have Penn State. I have just outside the top 10.
Just outside mine.
Yeah.
8. I feel like they've got proper expectations, so much passion. Like you've got full support of being able to go and get it done. I mean, him and Hall about James Franklin not winning the big one, but he's still there. Like
and he makes what, $10 million a year, $12 million a year, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good.
They're one kind of like Oklahoma. I worry about where they're going to fall in the pecking order with the 4 new teams coming, and that could impact all of a sudden that perception of them being right there behind Ohio State, Michigan. What if you're right there behind Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, USC? What if all of a sudden that gets a little bit more painful?
I don't have USC.
I didn't either.
I don't either right now.
What about Miami? Did you have them even think about them? Because I saw some people putting that.
Not without a stadium.
Yeah.
I'm not a Florida guy.
By the way, did you see Kitchens on at the draft, the combine?
See him run the 4.6 or something else?
No, talking about the stadium he'd rather play in. I think he said he'd rather play in his old high school stadium than in Hard Rock. He said it was a better atmosphere. I mean, it was
Hey,
bad.
let's just do it all at Drive Pink or whatever like the new name of it is. Just go ahead and fill up the house that Messi built. Tom, do you have it? I've got Notre Dame on my list at 10.
I've got Michigan in mind. I don't know if
Michigan
you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have Michigan top 10?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't have Notre Dame top 10.
Oh, let's leave. All right. So Andrew in the tailgate says not having USC is insane. Let's dig in. If all 4 of us are in agreement, I mean, very good. I've got it on my list. I just didn't put a number beside it, right? So clearly it was one of the 15 that came to mind. Living in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Some people I could live in Lincoln's house. I've seen pictures. I think I would be okay there with the 10 bedrooms on the Pacific Ocean, having those sunsets.
Would you be okay with those taxes, though?
That would be a problem.
Yeah, Danny, would you? Living in Los Angeles, trying to convince your hard-working analysts to come live 2 hours of traffic away from the facility because it's all they can afford on the salary that you're going to be paying them. You are operating in this position where You are treated like a pro team, but you don't totally have like all that sort of momentum behind you. You have a few wealthy donors. Never forget, USC is a private school, but it's not like you just have those like masses. And there ain't no IPTE going on with USC football.
And own the state of California, though, which is a lot of talent.
Yeah.
You know?
Earthquakes, drought, wildfires, mudslides. It's just a
I'll go
fantastic
game
place
day
to
atmosphere is a problem.
Yeah.
But when they're winning, the game day atmosphere is great. But they have to be winning.
It's back to the like when have we seen the Coliseum rocking recently?
And I think great for them is relative. Like, I think it can get pretty good, but I don't think it's anywhere close to a top 15 atmosphere.
Yeah, the drop off is enormous when it's not good.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing about the LA market. Like, it's all celebrity entertainment based. You have to be a celebrity to draw the fans. So USC has to be winning. Like during the Carroll Dynasty era, Snoop Dogg, Will Ferrell, all the local big hot celebrities at the time are always at all the games because it's the place you want to be seen. So that's the case with USC. You have to be winning.
Michigan was still packing out. Michigan was packing out the big house, even though Plaxico Burress was calling for Jim Harbaugh to be fired. Right? Like, I mean, the like community that pours out for Michigan football is why I would give Michigan football the edge over a place like USC.
Mm-hmm. And alignment. Are we sure USC is like that aligned?
No, it's been
recruiting under Lincoln Riley is. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not. I have somewhat downgraded my opinion of USC over the last few years in the NIL era, and I did not think I was going to.
Yeah.
Did Clemson's won multiple titles in the last decade? Did we not see them as a top job?
No.
See, I had Florida State and Clemson 9 and 10, but it's kind of subjective. I mean, it's very biased, clearly, but it also is figuring in that they'll get out of the ACC. They'll be in a better position in 5 years.
I think Dabo Swinney has made Clemson look like a better job. And so has Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence and like a fever dream run of 6 straight college football playoff appearances. And, you know, the last couple years have been a little bit closer to what Clemson is.
A version of Oklahoma? Like if they get to the, aren't they like kind of a similar program?
Oh, Oklahoma's got sustained generational success at the highest level.
Tend to agree. Where would we put? I think I would have Florida much higher in 2 years.
What?
Go ahead, Tom.
No, he was talking about the mega church.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, hey, like hope springs eternal, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think I would have UF much higher in like 2 years. A&M is also a program that I think you could really consider a top 10 job in 2 years. Like if Elko is able to get in there and just be like, you know what? There's no mystique about this place that you can't win, even though 100 years of history says there's something that nobody can figure out. You know, with Florida, like I think their new president really cares about sports quite a bit. So like I would be very surprised if they don't have new leadership and more alignment in a couple years with new coach, new AD, that kind of stuff. So I could see them jumping up, but right now I don't have either of those places in my top 10. Maybe I should.
See, I know I said earlier, like A&M would be my number one because they'll pay me a ton and the fans will give you a ton of money, but like they're not in my top 10 simply because of the expectations of the fan base that come with that job. Whereas it's like they get pissed off if you're not winning a national title when there's really nothing to show that, hey, that should be the expectation. It's like, no, we got to get there first before you can expect me to do it every year.
Any other schools that we have not mentioned?
All right. My list that I had, this is 15 schools for 10 spots. OU, Texas, Oregon, USC, Penn State, Michigan. This is not in order. Michigan, Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, Ohio State, Florida, A&M, Bama, LSU, UGA.
I think we hit them all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, who did we not hit that the chat thinks we should have had?
Nebraska? Some people might think. I didn't have him in my top 10. But
and that's the other thing is like, yeah, you can mention good jobs, but we're talking about top 10. What's your proximity to the best jobs? So, oh wait, Bud, did you not have Notre Dame on your 15?
No, I did.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Auburn's probably the one that I think people would say they've won a title in our lifetime. They've played for, I believe, 2 more. So
they're there with Tennessee, aren't they? Kind of Tennessee, Auburn.
I think Tennessee's a better job than Auburn.
I mean, if you want to coach at a banana republic, sure, you could throw Auburn in your top 10.
I think Tennessee is currently more stable than Auburn is from an alignment, who I'm working for type perspective.
I mean, let's think about what
I'd much rather work for Danny White.
Like Tennessee has successfully called an investigation on their own coach to get him out of there so they could hire a better coach. They have successfully put together one of the best NIL operations in college football.
But a coach that should have never, ever been fired. Like that'll go down as maybe like the worst coaching search in the history of this sport.
What, the one that ends up with Jeremy Pruitt? Oh, he should have been hired, is what you said.
Correct. Yeah, should have never, ever been hired. So, like, I get that they pulled some real gangster stuff to get him out and kind of like, hey, look at our violations.
Me, I'm not intimidated by it. It shows you can get things done. If I need something to be fixed on the other side, I at least know you've got weapons at your disposal.